If you click this video, I'm going to take the wild assumption that you are new to tabletop games and new to role-playing games specifically, I should say. That, or you're one of the coolest people on earth and you're a subscriber. No, but all jokes aside, I wanted to make this video especially for new role-playing game players, because I think there's a lot of media today that really hypes up Dungeons & Dragons and really hypes up tabletop role-playing games and makes them seem really fun to play, which they are, by the way, one of the single best pastimes ever created. But I think it sets a lot of really somewhat unhealthy, unreal expectations as to what playing these games is going to be like, especially for your first time. So today we're talking about the top few things that I would at least understand going into playing your first role-playing game. Whether you're playing with a group of people that's played before and you're the only newbie, or maybe you're playing with an entire group of newbies and you got a bunch of friends interested and willing to try it, or maybe you're DMing for the first time. Whatever the case may be, these are just some things that I would really consider, or at least understand when going into your first game, no matter what tabletop role-playing game it might be. So my first thing, and this one might hurt some feelings, is you're not Critical Role. Now, what I mean by this is understand that your whole group isn't a bunch of voice actors, for one. Two, you're not some professionally done, ridiculously expensive Dungeons & Dragons game, okay? At the end of the day, if you're playing, you're more than likely, at this day and age, online, or if not, you're in person with just a group of people that wants to have a good time. So don't expect it to feel like this mass Hollywood production. I think one of the things that really happens a lot, especially with the media portraying role-playing games a lot these days, is things like Critical Role, or really any other channel where you may watch your favorite series get played, is they really make it seem like it's this high-value production where there needs to be these crazy moments and everyone needs to have the perfect voices for their characters and you can never break character, and if you meta too much, it's really going to ruin the vibes or whatever. And it just won't be that case. Not only that, but a lot of the DMs on those shows and those different series have been doing it for 10s, 20s, probably sometimes even 30 years plus. They have tons of experience under their belt. So, long story short for this first bit, don't go into it expecting a Critical Role experience. Don't go into it expecting a Dimension 20 experience. They're awesome. They're great. I'm also not saying to stop watching those because they make amazing productions. Just understand that you are not going to have that level of production within your own game. Now, working past that, number two, especially for new players, is going to be you're going to have to break that awkward barrier, all right? If it's your first time in there, unless you have a lot of experience playing other characters, like you're a bit of a theater kid, or maybe you've done a lot of role-playing video games, so you kind of like to immerse yourself in the character, unless you're a very specific type of person, it's going to take a little bit to get comfortable with the idea of understanding that you're a whole new person, if that's how you want to play it, mind you. And that's kind of falls into the same categories. You don't have to be this whole other person. So with these two things, I'll even use myself as an example. If you go back and watch our original Naruto 5e campaign, it's very easy to tell that when I'm first starting, I'm a little uncomfortable referring to myself in the first person as Arata, which was the character I was playing in that campaign. Whereas as I get deeper and deeper into it, I'll still slip up and say, oh, Arata does this thing. But I really like to implant myself into it, so I got a lot better as to say, I do this thing, or I want to do this. Now, the other side of this, when it comes to breaking that awkward barrier, is understand you don't have to be that first person character. It is completely fine and okay to put yourself in the third person of this character because that might be more comfortable for you. And that's going to make the game a whole lot better, again, especially if this is your first time playing an RPG. It is more than acceptable to say, oh, Arata walks over to that building and knocks on the door, rather than I strut over to that building and I knock on the door. That's okay. There's probably some tabletop role-playing game purists that are gonna not like me for this and disagree, but do what makes you the most comfortable and do what you're gonna have the most fun with. My third tip is going to be don't be afraid to ask questions, all right? Sometimes in the middle of a session, you know that a group's kind of into it and everyone's role-playing, everyone's doing their parts. And as a new player, especially if you're in a group with people that know what they're doing, it can be very intimidating to ask a question in the middle of a session or clarify something or anything of that nature. And it's okay to do that. To be honest, most Dungeons & Dragons players and most tabletop RPG players in general, to be clear, not all of them, but most of them are really good people. Every single person I've met in the community we've created so far has been awesome. They've all been really cool. They all are their own person with their personalities, but none of them are assholes. Like you find a lot more assholes queuing up a game of solo queue Valorant, for those of you that like to partake in things like that. You'll find a lot worse people in that than you usually will in your tabletop RPG community. So don't be afraid in the middle of a session to kind of pause for a second, say, oh hey, how does rolling this check work again? Or what happens when I do this thing? Or how does blah 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 work? It's okay, and it's okay to not know things. Tabletop RPGs are rough. The base player handbook is like however many pages, hundreds. It's ridiculous. And if you want to read through all the books, have a good understanding, you're getting upwards of 1,000, if not more pages. So very few people have I met are going to expect a new player to have all of these rules and things down. And to be honest, more than likely, if you are playing with a more organized, more, experienced group of players, your DM is probably going to know that you're a new player, and they're going to treat that accordingly and understand that they're going to have maybe more questions than usual, or maybe have to clarify things more than usual. Now, my fourth and second to last tip is understand that there is RNG involved in these games, okay? A lot of times people step in, especially when you kind of get into the character and you're having a good time. Understand you're rolling dice at the end of the day. So what might seem like a meaningless, mundane task that you want to complete with your person, you might roll a nat 1, and then you're all of a sudden taking damage trying to milk a cow. I don't know, some ridiculous thing. So understand going into it that you're not playing a flawless adventurer that's an absolute beast unit that's going to accomplish everything you want to. You're going to fail some things, and that's okay. It's good to know going into it that you might not always win, so to speak. Now, I think that's a very dangerous mindset, and I would actually recommend leaving that mindset at the door when you step into any tabletop role-playing game. Because if you go into it wanting to win, there's a high likelihood you will not win. And the reason I put quotations around those is there really is no such thing as winning, okay? It's RNG, okay? You're there to have a good time. And that is a perfect segue into my fifth and final tip for my new players, is have fun. Okay, sometimes it's easy to forget because we're so used to playing board games where you want to win. Even back in the good old days, right? When the first games you learned was like Junior Monopoly or Uno. You want to win. You want to be the winner. That's just kind of what we're taught. But in a game like Dungeons & Dragons, while there is winning in some scenarios, right? Like you want to win the combat encounter, a lot of times you're just in a world where you're doing things and fun, ridiculous things might happen. And sometimes not winning is actually where the best moments come from. You rolling a nat 1 while trying to walk up some stairs or hurdle an obstacle or something like that can create some of the funniest, most memorable moments you will ever have playing a role-playing game. So just have a good time. All right, tip number 5, it's cliche, it's oversaid, but it's not followed enough. Just have fun. Hopefully this list helps all you new players out get a little more comfortable and kind of maybe have some expectations going into it that are slightly different than what you started. Or maybe this is for the player that just got TPK'd and needed to remember why the heck they play this game, because boy can it be infuriating sometimes. But nonetheless, if y'all enjoyed the content, subscribe down below so you can get more of it. And if you have any questions, comment down below, or maybe you actually have some tips that I didn't mention. I mean, there's a countless number of things that you could tell a new player to keep in mind or whatever, but this is more about the mental and getting started of it. So hopefully this helped, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace out.